usually with something is it's not 100%, I still am able to be like a little bit optimistic at the very least. And even if it's not fully optimistic, it's like I'll pull through somehow. And if I don't pull through, maybe I wasn't deserving enough, right? Uh, or maybe that day just wasn't my day, because it happens too, right? But yeah, I mean, it got a little dark, especially because it's like it's rather natural and normal. No, it's human to say like, hey man, like if you get your finger injured, it's like okay, maybe you are bitching a little bit now. But when it's like something major, like a rib, like your ligaments on your knees, your shoulder is not able to go like above your head, stuff like that. Okay, probably you should say, hey, thank you for the invitation. I won't be able to go. I'm not 100%. And sure, like 4 days before the tournament, I was kind of tempted to say that, but I was like, no, just go, just go. We never know what's gonna happen. And man, luckily everything played out as it did. You know.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your friendly neighborhood BJJ podcaster, Rafa Esparza, coming to you with another great installment of the Grappling Hour. I hope you are ready for a good episode. I hope you're ready to see somebody who won an incredibly chaotic, hilarious, amazing, nerve-wracking EBI. We're going to talk to him in just a second, but back on me before we get to our wonderful guest. A couple quick reminders. One, if you like this show, and I hope that you do, check us out at patreon.com/grappling hour. If you go there, for $5 a month, you can see my interviews 30 days before anybody else. And for a few extra dollars, you can see extra bonus content not available anywhere else, including extra episodes that we don't share anywhere else. You can also see tape studies that we do with the athletes themselves, where they walk us through their matches. You can see a segment where people roast my competition footage. It's called Roast Raf. It's everybody's favorite segment except mine. Because sometimes, sometimes you're on a heater and you think you're doing really good things in competition, and then you show it to somebody who's actually good at competing and they're like, it's not that great. Like, it's a very humbling segment, but all of you find it very funny. And one of the most recent things we did with our good friend Chris Wojcik, we played the Grappling Hour Challenge, where our guests get one submission that they pick out at random. I don't know what it is, and they have 2 minutes to hit that submission on me. Surprisingly, another favorite segment from you sickos, because you like seeing me under duress. Nonetheless, Chris had a great time because he's pretty good at jiu-jitsu. Let's just say that. Anyway, back to our little preamble here. Check us out, patreon.com/grappling hour. You can also go to rafasparza.com/merch. You can find some merch there, get you a Grappling Hour hoodie, a t-shirt, whatever it is that you find there. Support the show. It really does mean a lot. Every penny that you pay goes right back into the show. So do that. You can also like, comment, and subscribe. If you don't know what you want to put in the comment section, by the end of this video, I will give you a prompt that will help you figure out something to comment on. So I don't know what we're going to talk about. Damon's got a lot of cool stuff in his history. So I want to make sure that we cater it to something that we talk about in this discussion. And last but not least, if you enjoy the conversations that we have here, you can check us out on Discord for further conversations that extend from this show. All right, let's get to our guest. Well, if you watched the most recent installment of EBI, that is EBI 23, you probably had your mouth agape at least part of it. You were probably so captivated by his performance that you probably got up out of your chair several times like I did. You probably had to watch it in segments, by the way, because it got so intense. I had to put it on pause and walk away every once in a while because so many crazy things were happening. And we're friends with a lot of the people in this tournament. And while a lot of people would say that there were some spoilers that happened. One thing is for sure. You can call our guest a spoiler, but if you've been watching his career, you know that he is an apt individual who's been killing it on the scene, who really got his showcase last Sunday. And, well, there's no reason to wait any longer. Why don't we bring on the winner of the most recent EBI, one, Demian Balderrama. Demian, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, very good. Just, chilling, normal Tuesday. Getting back home from training.
How long were you training today? Because whenever somebody comes on the show, obviously they have other stuff to do. What does like a normal Tuesday look like for you?
Like today, for example, it's kind of like the easier day, you know? My tougher days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I live in TJ right now. Ever since the pandemic, I came back from San Diego. I've always lived here like for 17 years. But when Professor Andre recruited me, I spent 3.5 years over there. And then just 2 weeks shy of the pandemic starting, I came back to TJ. Funny enough, it was after it was Combat Worlds, the featherweights, when I fought with Imanari. So kind of funny that like we're talking about two different installments of essentially EBI and combat, no? But essentially, a normal day of training would be, for example, on Monday, a tough session would be going to the AM complex at Atos, right? That's like 2 hours. So excluding crossing the border and like 2 hours of getting there, because I go by trolley and the bus and then having to walk over there. Then once that segment is done, so I will have like 2 hours training already, no? Then I would do 1 hour strength and conditioning, and then I will do an hour, like 30 minutes drilling, wood reaction, and then I will do 40 minutes sparring, and then I will teach my class, and I will spar also with my students. So that's kind of like the status quo that I do. So Tuesday, the only thing that changes is I don't cross 2 hours. So those 2 hours is the only ones that I subtract. And I'll just complement it with running, jogging, anything. Just have a little bit more of physical activity, right? So, yeah, I like to kill myself training, really. So I think that's what works best for me.
Well, clearly it paid off at the most recent EBI, and we'll get into that for a second. But you're talking about 2 hours of travel in between, like sessions. So if you're trying to make that trip over, that you've got time to kill. What are you doing with those 2 hours? Because I'm a person that multitasks all the time. And I really do try to make effective use of my downtime, especially when I used to take public transport a lot out here in Los Angeles. They don't connect very well. So what should be a 30-minute trip somehow turns into like an hour and a half for me, even going very, very quickly. So what are you doing in that time to help pass the time?
It depends. Like, for example, when it's like so early in the morning, because before it used to be at 7 a.m. Now, like, funny enough, after ABI, like, they changed it into 11 a.m. So that works in my favor. Now more hours of sleep and stuff like that. So I'll be able to be like a little bit more recovered. Usually my setup would be in the 2 hours heading up to training. It would mostly be like, I wouldn't say motivate myself, just kind of like put myself in that rhythm. Because I know it's like I just woke up. In reality, I'm not getting enough sleep for my troubles, right? So it's just kind of like putting myself into that mood of like, okay, come training, we're gonna train hard, you know. Then once I coming back, it depends. Like sometimes I'll do like a study tape. Some other times I'll just I don't know. I try not to, because I train so much. I don't try to put so much hours into jiu-jitsu off the mats, unless it's something that I'm very intrigued by. You know, like a secret of movements that I've been working on and something that I could probably add or subtract. Maybe like see different reactions that work better. But if not, I just try to like either draw, if I can, because like sometimes I can control you move a lot. I try just kind of like whatever type of topic that I'm not very like knowledgeable. I try to like research. I like doing that a lot. I feel like it keeps me more complete as a human being, you know. And if not, I'll just see like whatever random stupid thing in YouTube. I'm young, so I just like watching whatever like kind of puts me at ease as well, right? Because end of the day, like sure, I know martial arts and stuff like that, no, but end of the day, like sometimes going in public transportation can be a little difficult in the sense of you never know like if something crazy is going to happen, so I kind of have to be a little too tense sometimes. So just having something in YouTube, be it music, be it a video of I don't know, like a gamer talking about anything, kind of like eases me off. So that helps.
I can imagine that because for me, and this is full disclosure, I would be watching more jiu-jitsu stuff if I'm on public transportation because I feel like that's my time to study and I'm going to end up at my jiu-jitsu gym, but I might be watching high-level practitioners. You are usually going on your way to train under a very highly respected grappler. So, you don't necessarily have to watch that. It's probably better to have a calming mechanism of going somewhere else. You mentioned you're watching gaming videos though. So
Yeah.
does this kind of make the assumption that you yourself are a pretty big video game person? And if so,
Yes.
what games are you tending to play?
I'm a completionist, to be honest. Like, for example, and this is gonna sound a bit nerdy, but I have one account in the same PlayStation, right? Like, I have one account where like I'll play multiplayer, just kind of like goof off, do whatever, and then on the other account I'll platinum games, no? Like 100% them. Just because that's the way like I am. I like collections, no? I think part of like being such a competitor comes with that, no? Like striving for greatness, even in little things, right? Like even when I draw and like if I don't feel like it's not good, like I could have done better, I'll probably do the same drawing again and try to like eliminate imperfections. And with the gaming is the same thing, you know, like for example, right now I've been going hard at the Souls like games, right? Like Bloodborne, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, Elden Ring. And I've platinum a couple of them now. I'm still at like halfway through Dark Souls 2. That's the one that I'm moving right now. Goes to Tsushima. Actually, my wife, she's playing it as well. So it's kind of funny because it's like I'll play it, and I've already platinum, but in the other account. So now I'm doing the redo, right? So it's weird because it feels like when you do jiu-jitsu, right? Is you have a lot of creative options at the same time, but it's like you know how things are gonna play out if you do it long enough, no? So in a game, it's the same thing. It's like you can play it and you'll get to point A to finishing the story, right? But now when you redo it, you know how it plays out. So it's more so like how efficient you can do it while having fun. I feel like jiu-jitsu is the same. No, it's like I can do a knee cut and be like, oh, this is the basic knee cut. Now I'll do it. And then I can put like two or three more moves that maybe it's not that they're super necessary, but like if you know the setup and you know that you want to land in side control, it's kind of how I put extra objectives, no? Like maybe with someone with a high level guard, I won't do that. But maybe with somebody that I know, I'll probably pass this guard, but like I'll make it more fun. No, I'll make it more interesting. I think that's a good way of putting like side objectives, not per se.
That's pretty good. So you mentioned you're a competitor at heart. Obviously, we know that from watching again at EBI. I do want to ask two follow-up questions here. The first, I don't think you'll like, hopefully you'll like the second. The first, what is the worst game that you are really not good at? Because you mentioned a few games, but those probably are under the accounts where you've done some test runs and you look pretty good on one of those main accounts, the competitor account, if you would.
Yeah.
But what's the one that you biff and you're not really good at and that really upsets you that you wish you could be better at?
I don't know. I feel like I'm decent at most games, like at the very least decent. But like you said, not like at heart I'm a competitor, so I always try to be like very good. So I guess shooters that are with teams. I think with teams, like I kind of struggle a bit because it's always that variable. No, like the one guy that doesn't want to like play along and he's just kind of like doing his own thing, or he's goofing off way too hard to the point where like he becomes that way. No, I'm always usually very good when I can take helm, right? Like, say for example, um, before my fiance moved in with me, we used to play Apex Legends, right? Like duos, and that's how we started talking more so, right? Because we knew each other from a seminar. I did a seminar in Mexico City, and then not in Mexico City, in Leon, and we kind of like meet there, but then we started like talking more playing, and whenever we play teams, like the both of us, or I am in control of a team in Apex, like a squad or whatever, usually if I don't win, at the very least I can have a good time, and usually my teammates can play along well, and we do like decently, right? But whenever it's like a shooter of like a team deathmatch, and it's like, oh, everybody's kind of like doing their own thing and there's no coordination, usually it's that, like, more so because of the variable of like I cannot control that, right? uh yeah, usually those are the games that made me like rage with the most, I guess.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'm also glad to hear that you met your wife playing games, because most people, or I'm sorry, your spouse, future to be, apologies here if I got that wrong.
Oh, good, okay.
But your fiance, if I heard that correctly, I would hope that that is something that you guys continue to do, because there are a lot of people who get older who start playing video games and have a partner who go, are you just going to go do that for now? And they go, yeah, I'm going to be in here for a minute, because I don't even game anymore. And my wife is relieved, but I have this as what I do, where I'm like, well, I'm going to go interview and then edit. So it's like I'm playing a video game now. You also mentioned in there, in that short description prior to that, that you draw. And I'm intrigued by that. What do you draw? Because if you're that bored, sure, you'll draw something, but that had to have come at an earlier part. When did you know that you kind of had that skill, or that you were interested in drawing?
It's funny because ever since I was like a toddler, I used to do a lot of scribbles. My father, he's a graphic designer. He actually worked with a lot of, what you call it, of enterprises differently, you know, like, because usually what they do is like they buy the license, you know. So he has worked for many things for Disney, for like SpongeBob, for like The Simpsons, and like Scooby Doo, stuff like that. Recently, he had a job gig at Funko, right, with like the T-shirts and stuff like that. So I think genetically, I have that gift of like being very creative. Um, but the funny part is like he hasn't really teach me much about drawing. He's giving me a lot of like concepts and like pointers, you know, but not so much in the sense of oh, like right now, like the way we do this is like this, you know, like sit down and I'll show you. Not really. And that's always been very like very normal in my family. Is like the way we teach is different. It's not like I'll sit you down and look at me and now you do it. It's more so like you try and figure it out, and then I'll steer you right in the path, right? Because at the end of the day, like if I inherit a skill, it has to be mine, right? So I feel like even with my jiu-jitsu was kind of the same. I've always had like a lot of help from my professors and stuff like that, but I'm not a very big ask questions guy. I like to struggle. I like kind of like be more in the field, and it's like, okay, my body's short, my limbs are short, I do this, I do that. I'm not super strong. I'm kind of fast, not so much, but I have a limited cardio, so I can do this, this, and that, right? And I think that's what kind of works for me, right? Like I have to kind of like go around the technique and see like what applies, you know, like what's best for me for my type of build. And that's kind of how I do it with my students as well. Like I'll present the technique, and then I'll also say like if you're short, you do this. If you're long, you'll probably want to do so more like this way, no? And I feel that's kind of why like most of the students are very happy with the way I teach and stuff like that, because it seems very like personal without having to be there like holding their hand as well. If they ask something, like I'll go to them, no? And I feel that's kind of like how drawing started, because before it was scribbles, then I was like, no, I wanna be good at it. You know, so that competitive nature again. And then I was like, okay, I don't really like drawing like realistic people, but I like drawing like animation, animated, cartoonish, objects and stuff like that, helmets. Uh, right now, like for example, I like Berserk a lot, right? So that type of style, like I also try and emulate. I'll see like a panel and I'll try to do it like as close as possible, right? Because I'm very good at watching and then recreate, correct? Don't remember how you say it, but it's kind of like I'll get a little bit like on the anime side, you know, like the cast, you know, you use like the Sharingan, you see, and then like you're able to put it on paper, you know.
Mm.
That's kind of like how the way I do things. Like I'll probably go ahead and ask if I feel like something's okay, like I'm struggling too much, you know. But I'd much rather first try and do it myself.
You know what? That does tell a lot. I didn't think that story would be connected necessarily to your jiu-jitsu, but it does explain a lot. Because for you to understand that you're a person that says, put me in this position and I may not have the answers, but I want to struggle because then I'll find my way out. And I think given your performance at EBI, it also fills in some gaps because I have to be honest with you. Part of the reason I had to start and stop watching it is because you made some of those submissions look very easy. And we'll go to a match by match. But let's just start by just addressing your first submission that you hit. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was the armbar that you got in that very first round, correct?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people said it was a shoulder lock, but it wasn't. It's where I come from, they call it a koala, no, like the animal, because like they hug it and they do like this. But it's a straight armbar, correct? So
yeah.
In essentiality, my line of thought was, okay, I'll go omoplata, right? Kind of going off from the rubber guard, and then if he straightens his arm out, I'll try and isolate both arms to go for like an armbar on the far side. But since he didn't do that, I was like, oh, well, I'll attack the near side, right? So that was kind of like my whole idea. So I was like kind of trying to attack like two or three things at the same time. Because my whole gig was, I know these guys are gonna fight their heart out, so I have to do a couple of things. I have to, one, grab and not let go until the refs tell me to do so, because I know like maybe one or two Brazilian taps will get in there. So I was like, nah, I'm not gonna deal with that. Because it's happened in the past. So I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do that.
Well, I also want to point out, I'm glad that in Mexico it's also known as a Brazilian tap, because I thought that was just something we said here in the States. But okay, I'm glad you guys are also calling it that.
Yeah, it's especially because like a lot of Brazilians comes to Mexico, so like we've had that culture a little bit diluted because like they don't really stay here for long, at least not most Brazilians. But we like most of the things that have now become the norm in California, we've had it here like first, but not really because they haven't stuck long enough to have a very long lasting impact, correct? Not say like, for example, like Shanji's in San Diego, Professor Andres in San Diego, no? Eduardo Teles is in San Diego, and there's like in TJ, like you'll probably have like 2 or 3 legends stop by, but it's just that they stop by and then they'll go somewhere else, no? Because it's just kind of like how they bounce off, correct?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, that's nice. You're explaining it very well. I'm still trying to yell at you because the effortlessness in how you pulled it off. Because to me, first of all, I got to see your flexibility in that moment. And I thought, all right, that's pretty impressive. But you kind of count on that for people to be in an EBI situation. Then you look at it as being a shoulder lock. So you go, oh, most people won't get that. So let's see how he kind of works that out. And then in transition, when you are on bottom and it's almost like he's trying to move down and you're very, very receptive to staying with him and making sure you're going to come up on top, you also had the wherewithal to know, oh, his arm's blocked here. at this point he's stuck. I just got to start moving this arm. Like, to me, it happened so fast as I was watching it on the screen. And that, I think, probably best exemplifies what you were mentioning in terms of having so much time in a struggle, that when you're really in this moment and it really counts, that you were able to figure that out. So to me, even just asking a question about your drawing, I just kind of could put some things together and I go, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So before we go to the other matches, I would like to know, you mentioned that you have been in other versions of this kind of EBI format, whether it's combat jiu-jitsu style or anything like that. Can you take me to the first time that you were contacted to do one of these events and what was going through your brain? Because to chart that journey, I think is also telling in why the moment meant what it meant to you. So would you mind telling us the very first time you were contacted to do one of these shows?
Yeah, funny enough, the first time they contacted me, they didn't contact me. It was my parents. Because I fought in EBI 3 in a super fight with another juvenile. And I was, if I'm not incorrect, I was probably 15 at the time. And I didn't have the control of my social media. It was my parents. Because, to be honest, like, for example, with me, since I'm very introverted, I never saw the necessity of a phone. So they would kind of just move my social media for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, like, whatever. No, like, we'll post whatever. Like, I'm doing well in competition, stuff like that. And then they contacted them, correct? So I had the super fight when I was 15. And then the combat one was 2020, I believe. And in that one, they did contact me directly. And then for this one, I was coming back from Indianapolis Open. I don't really remember the date, but I would dare say it was like 3 weeks before the event itself. Probably, yeah.
So let's go back to your very young time. At starting at EBI 3. It feels like a completely different ecosystem, because that was the time that you had Gary Tonin when he was starting to emerge, and all these really big superstars that we know now were really like fighting for their chances. I was covering those events, so I remembered seeing you as a kid, and I'm not surprised by your progression, but I was still like, as I put it all together, all I could think of was, man, okay, you started at these events that had a lot of eyeballs back then, and people were watching that. So did it ever cross your mind that you really wanted to go into the big event, like to the actual competition? Because when they were doing those specialized ones, that has to feel super great. And I don't know if you're even thinking about that in the future, what it's going to be like. But to have that experience already, did it feel like something you wanted to achieve, or were you just taking it for what it was at the time?
No, like, being realistic and honest, it was more so like, oh, like, I'm doing well in competition and they're inviting me. Like, that's the way I took it. Like, even as a kid, like, I feel I've always been very, like, mature with the way I see things. I wouldn't say as mature as I am now, of course, but I was taking it more so like, oh, cool, like, I'm doing well and they noticed, correct? But no, like, even becoming like a full-time, half-time, whatever I am competitor, right? I think it was more so like the fact that I've always been very good at fighting, even before I started training, like a high IQ for fighting itself, no? So I think that's mostly what created those opportunities, that I've always enjoyed fighting, and that the fact that I was doing well created opportunities, correct? So I feel it was mostly that, to be honest.
Fair enough. I mean, thank you for that, because I never know. I've started producing events in the most recent of years, and now for Subversive, we have kids on our events. And whenever we have kids on our events, I'm getting their parents coming up to me being like, have you met my kid yet? I was like, no, I haven't. I'm producing the show. I'm busy. Like, hello, nice to meet you, kid. But I always know in my brain, like, at least try to take a moment to get to know them and say thank you for being on the show, or to point out, like, if I'm commentating their match, if I have a connection to, oh, I saw your match, kid, you're really good at this or this, because in the future they might pull a you and be on one of these massive tournaments. But to me, sometimes these kids aren't thinking that way. They're just like, hey, this is cool, I'm just doing this. Like, they don't know any better. And half the time I'm like, I don't think they even know what it is I do or who I am. So I'm just going to be nice, say hello, and do what I need to do. So I'm glad that that's kind of the progression that has worked for you, because here you are 20 events later, now becoming the champion. So it is kind of a nice poetic justice for you to be able to say 20 events later, not only are you still around, but the event's still around, because for years they got so into the combat that they stopped doing EBIs, so that you probably got to realize what it was like to be an EBI champion, even though I'm going to say they're out of the strikes to EBI. So it's a little different, but we'll get to that in a second. So you mentioned that you were traveling, then you get this call. You obviously know it's going to be in Mexico, so that's already a plus for you. What does training for this particular event feel like? Is it any different from your normal sort of training, or does it get a little bit more specified to this rule set or to this particular style?
Kinda. I wouldn't say so necessarily, because to be honest, like when I came back from the FGF Open, by that Wednesday, so say like 3 days after the tournament, that's when I injured my rib. So I couldn't do a full blown camp. To be honest, I was training. I think I did say that in the interview after the final match, where like I was training, but there was no camp, to be honest. But to be fair, I always train like if I am in camp, so it makes no real difference. It's probably the only thing that counts is like the strategy, what you're thinking of doing, like certain elements that you have to take into account, especially with the rule set, But at least for me, it didn't feel that way, because, like I said, like I'm always ready. It's just more so like like the competitor's obligation, like being away, getting to the tournament, trying to be as healthy as possible. But sometimes that's not on the table. So it's just like, hey, like you can apply weight to your knee, right? So you can go. So like I have competed in combat a lot of times. I was actually champion in an organization of combat style fights in Mexico City in Wildest. So I was already aware of like how to fight, like what I needed to do. The only difference was like in Budo they use the closed cage, So a lot of MMA fighters, we try to use a strategy of like takedown, put you close to the fence, try and strike. And I did have to go to some fights to be honest, like 1 or 2 fights where like I had to kind of like switch my mind into like, okay, we're in a cage. I need to do things a little bit different because it's not gonna work the same way, right? But when it came down to like combat in and of itself, not really, because since you don't have the thing of like stopping you with the inbounds, outbounds, and stuff like that, no, you can just stand up and go again, right? So in reality, like if you want to make it a point of like frustrating your opponent and then seizing the moment, you can. It's just more so of like recognizing windows and patterns, correct? So I think that's also why like I never really became frustrated with the idea of like all the punches and stuff like that. Sure, it's scary, right? But then again, like if you're a true martial artist, you need to be willing to get hit if you want to break someone's arm, right? So this is the way you should be thinking.
That's fair. And I mean, yeah, it is hard. There's different philosophies on this all around. I think the general perspective from most combat athletes is I think it is important to train it a little bit for everybody, because I think they want that simulation to feel a little bit more real, because what we do is so specialized as a sport because it's treated like a sport, but it has roots in self-defense. Football, basketball, they don't have roots in self-defense. That's why people can play that game. you don't play fighting, you end up in fighting, or you want to fight. And there are repercussions for that either way. So I feel like, yes, that is something that a lot of people tend to point out. It's also why I'm a stickler for some of my guys when I coach them. And like the basic of trying to tell them like, hey, when you're in half guard and you do a certain escape, like a regular belt line escape, and you trap the foot, you start coming around and you build this underhook. I'll always tell them, I'm like, hey, you kind of want to blade down with it. That's part of it that can help you get out and come out the back door. But I always tell them, I'm like, you kind of want to cup the hand, like around like the bicep here with the other hand. And they'll look at me like, why? And I go, well, you're not getting punched here, but maybe you might. And don't you want to be able to trace that arm if you were fighting? Like, I don't know what any of you guys are getting into. I'm teaching you a very specialized thing for the sport, but some of you might tell me one day you want to fight, and I don't want to give you a shitty thing to take with that. So I try to give them the information that says like, hey, and then even then, sometimes I even invite them. I'm like, all right, try and punch me from here. And they'll try, and I'll look at them and I go, two things are missing here. One, you can't activate power because you need it usually with your hips. So if you're getting monitored, at least I'm able to tell like, all right, this is a pretty shitty hit. But two, I can block it. You can pummel. You have certain things you can do. And my students always look at me, especially when I tell them like, try and hit me. Like legitimately go for it. And they go, what the fuck? Like ref doesn't do this, And I go, hey, just do it. And it's just something that I think is important from my side. Even though I don't try to profess like, hey, this Eminari roll is going to be really effective on the street. I just go, no, this is what we do here. Here's what you need to know. Here's what it does. Here's its limitations. But I do like that you bring that experience into what you do. Let's get back into the tournament itself. So we talked about your first match. You had the benefit of going 4 for 4 on submissions. So let's just walk through each of them. So what was it like to get your second submission? Because you already got one, your day's off to a pretty good start. There's a lot of things happening around you. So as we get into your second match, are you watching these other matches? Are you watching how wild this is? Did it feel wild at the actual event itself?
No, because from prior experience, like I saw how it was, like the whole Jiu-Jitsu with the punches, and especially when MMA fighters are in the mix, right? Because for a Jiu-Jitsu purist, it will nullify the game. Like, cause sometimes, like you said, no, like they don't take into account the fact that like the punches and stuff like that. They think it's like, oh, just put him into a certain guard and then some submission is going to come up from it. No, but no, it's just like it's a little bit more complicated than that. So me per se, I was watching like my side how it was playing out, only so that I would know a bit of like, okay, like certain patterns, who punches more than who, or who prioritizes more like having good base, like the jiu-jitsu grip exchanges, right? Like pummeling the leg or something. Who is a little bit more focused into like the takedowns and stuff like that. Only so that I would recognize, correct? So, but I feel like my way of being like too stoic helps me, because nothing really faces me a lot. Because I mean, where I come from is like you see crazy shit all the time. So it's like whatever, it's at least here they're not gonna pull a gun on me or whatever. So I'll be okay.
You are right. I don't believe the guns have been legalized in EBI yet.
Yeah,
but
not yet.
You never know. Could be. Sometimes Coach or Master Eddie, likes to spice things up. Because honestly, the first time when they brought in the slaps, I have to admit I was not the biggest fan of it, because I just thought like, either do MMA or do not. Like I don't really mind either way. And I was nervous at the time that we were going to expose how bad strikers we as grapplers can be sometimes. And over the years, I think we've evolved. We've seen some MMA athletes come in and have some great moments. And then we've seen some of these guys who just realize like they get that like Darth Vader moment where they see like, oh, I can hit with this. And they feel like darkness running through their veins. And you go, oh no, we unleashed something in that guy. Like therapy did not help him. Now he's getting to let it all out. So in your particular case, though, you know, they were all submission wins. So for you, it was just like a very classic jiu-jitsu game that was winning it. And the twist is, let's get back to the second match. You were going in on a single. Now your opponent seemed to kind of be throwing you a certain way and that you're kind of losing the grip. Now, most people, when they lose that grip, are in danger. But as he's grabbing that and kind of pulling you down, it was like he gave you a gift and you ended up in a different type of armbar position here. So walk us through your recollection of that, because again, I don't want to tell you to F off, but I was insanely jealous of how like flawless it looked. It just looked really cool. So walk us through how you remember that going.
So, for example, like with me, I know for a lot of people that don't know me yet, it might seem a little hard to believe. But I feel like whenever somebody gets close to me, right, how can I explain? Like no double guard pull, putting the legs in between. Like I was just gonna play with her feet, you know. When it's just jiu-jitsu, like hey, like engage with me, right? I feel usually I'm able to get into positions where I can create a lot of trouble, right? Maybe not submit right away, but maybe from that grip I can start climbing into the back. Maybe I can start pummeling the legs, or like I'll go calf slides back, stuff like that, no? So in exchanges like that, where like it's a scramble essentially, no? I feel like I've always been very good with like knowing how to appreciate the moment and be able to like attach myself, kind of like in Spanish they say like garrapata, so like a tick, right? I kind of like bite something and just keep it, right? So I feel kind of like in those type of situations where like you just gotta know when to like grab something, squeeze on it with like a bite, and then okay, you know how to align your legs, you know how to align the grips, just okay, try and snap it, you know. Obviously, like the setup was more so like I knew with Rivas like he would try and like explode out of certain situations, right? Because back in Entrum, he used to train with me, right? Because I was the head coach for Jiu-Jitsu for the MMA fighters for some time, and so we will be able to train sometimes, not a lot because you know like MMA fighters kind of like doing their own thing. But we did train a couple times, so I kind of knew like that from the get go, you know. And I knew it was gonna be like something that I have to take care of. Like okay, like even if I start doing jiu-jitsu, he's not gonna try and stay there, right? So it was more so like the moment I generate a grip to where like I know I can get something, at the very least land on top, you know, start climbing into the back. If arms are reaching too much, like go for the arm, you know. So that was kind of more so like what happened. So I was kind of like not so much waiting, but generating positions to where like okay, separate the arms as far as possible from the hips, or make sure like you have the knee line, right? That was kind of like my two main ideas. And luckily it was for the arm, so you know, I was able to just kind of like capture and then destroy from there.
You did. Now, let me tell you what it looked like to me, because I hear your explanation now. So I feel like, oh, I kind of understand where you're coming from. But when I was watching it, especially live, my thought was it looked like you were about to face plant. And I thought that you did, but really you didn't like hit your head there. You like had the wherewithal to move your head to the side. You moved your body. You actually moved the leg in at the perfect time. And then you had the break off of it. Now, the thing that upset me is that I looked again and I go, well, that looked really, yeah, okay. When you do it like that, it's easy. Yeah, sure. Okay. But then you, in your celebration, started pointing to your brain. And I was like, okay, listen, dude, I'm smart too, but I can't do that. So I legitimately had this moment where I was just looking at you and I go, bro, I know how I operate. And I know from that single leg, if they had gotten that on me, this giant head would have hit the mat. So what was going through your head when that happened?
I mean, like I said, it's kind of like when you do hand fighting, no, like you just like you grab head, you grab wrist, you know, you turn your hair around, you grab wrist, to on one, you pull, you know? for me, it was kind of like that because in the single leg, right, as I was going off, I was like, okay, if I don't put my hands, yeah, sure, like I might break my face, no? But I was like, if I put my hand and then I also grab them at the same time, in essentiality, I just kind of like gotta serve this. So that was like my whole idea. No, like I'm gonna go into straight a rolling armbar, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of more so like, okay, just don't stiffen yourself up because then you're gonna get hurt. Just kind of write it off, and most likely with the momentum of how it's going, I'll be able to adjust to it, right? So that's kind of like how I was thinking on the moment. Because my jiu-jitsu is also very good at scrambles, like reactionary, right?
Mm.
So that's kind of why I was thinking, like, yeah, like you gotta be smart with it, no? Like you gotta like don't think so much of what's ahead of you. Think about the opportunities you can generate. That's how my jiu-jitsu goes usually. That's when you start throwing too much like strategy in, it's like you're probably gonna have a shitty fight, you know, like one of those like advantage to advantage fights. And I don't really like that. I like, okay, maybe I won by 2 points, where it was like two very hard points, no, not just coming out from like, oh, I stood up and then like I got them. No, I was like, no, I don't like that.
I feel you because I have definitely won matches by points and still apologize to my coaches because I'm like, it looked pretty boring. I'm really sorry. And they're
Yeah.
always like, I believe this too. It's something that I fiercely believe, which is if you're the athlete, you don't need to apologize. I just can't follow my own rules because I've been in matches where I was like, that was so boring. Like, I feel
Yeah.
bad you witnessed that. And they're like, but you won. I was like, right. I can't, I have to say it. And then once I say it, I'm done. So I feel that. I don't think you have that issue. Third match.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So, I've already yelled at you for two things. I'm going to continue my disappointment. The third thing that you're doing here is this beautiful mix between you're starting this look. You don't even have a heel hook to begin with, but you're searching for one. And then you start trying to pass the leg over to see what you might do with it. Then, when it looks like they're going to start disengaging, there's maybe a slicer involved. Not happening. Then you start looking like you're about to do a crab ride. And I think, what in the IBJJF is this young man about to do with no gi pants or grips? And then you still managed to make it a slicer from something that looked like it was starting to run away. Like you were looking for the back and then just said like, oh, is this here? Well, okay, I'm just going to finish this. So talk to us about your third finish, because in a night full of really impressive moments, that was one of the ones where I said, your ability to see through a submission when it didn't necessarily present itself was truly impressive.
So I've always considered myself very like, how can I say, opportunistic. So as I was going into the fall tree, my whole idea was, okay, I know he's going to start turning away, so I was going to go for the toes first, right, to be able to generate pressure. And if that would generate pressure, then I would do the grip, right? If that wasn't the case, I know most likely because he was going to open his hips, he was going to start going to his knees. So I was like, okay, this life is going to come, no? As I was feeling like he was kind of like, not slipping, but more so like how can I explain? Like the attachment was not correct in and of itself. I was like, okay, I'm not going to stick here too long because at the end of the day, it was 10-minute fights. So I was thinking, maybe I'll have to go to the bag and then probably fight the grips a little longer and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, I'll play a little bit more conservative, correct? So as I was climbing into the crab ride, I saw that he was fighting my feet too much. So I was like, oh, so you're not fighting my hands. Therefore, I can start going for your legs again. So I was kind of thinking, okay, if I go with the X on the knee and I create a grip, I'll be able to slip into the calf slides again and probably better than before. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And so by the time I go into the calf slides, my whole idea was, if I just do the triangle, he's probably going to try and like wait it out, like maybe see if I get frustrated or something. So I started generating more pressure by starting to push my leg down and trying to close the gap with my knees, so not to be too like open and more so like a vertical, correct?
Mm-hmm.
If that wasn't going to happen, then it was like, okay, the calf slides, and I was going to go for his neck. It was kind of like pull more layers on top of layers and layers and layers. up until like something needs to happen, right? But luckily, like I was able to keep him there. And to be honest, like I think this is kind of like something that even since a kid I've always liked, like climbing, like trees and stuff like that. And I like climbing in the back a lot, you know, like he feels like a monkey bar. So I was thinking like, okay, but if something doesn't happen here, okay, I'll go to the shoulder and just like explaining up. Because my whole idea was like, if I have to fight the whole 10 minutes, I'll do it. But preferably, I don't want to do that, right? Because 10 minutes is a lot. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like sometimes what happens a lot with tournaments that are like the points are involved, you'll take care of too much of the points and we'll forget that there's a lot of submissions in between. And sometimes, in order to get good positions, you need the submissions to land into position, right? Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like they can be traded from position. So I feel that's kind of something that in combat you don't need to worry about because you can be taken down. It's like, oh, if I submit you, I win, right? It doesn't matter. It's not like by the end of the 10 minutes, it's like, oh, by points, the other guy wins. No, sure, you look good for the audience, but at the end of the day, like what matters is taking the other guy out. So I think having that mentality kept me worrying, like, you know what, let's not reach for the back. Let's keep it the legs and try and see if we can make something happen. And if that doesn't work, then proceed to something else.
I think the turning point for me was as you were doing the crab ride, and this was something that just showed your high grappling IQ, is that most people, when they don't have the grips, the lack of a gi, if you would, they just kind of concede, oh, he's going to stand up. Like you might have an anchor on that leg that is beginning the calf slice, but then you did this waist grip that literally you didn't hold on to it. You just brought him back down. So you got this waist grip just to bring him back and then said like, I don't know, let's see if I can still make this calf slicer happen. And you did. But I thought that was the moment that I go, oh, yeah, I don't do that. That's what's missing. Like I might get to that position and then I might just concede, he's getting back up. We're going to wrestle back up now. For you, I thought that was so telling because you seem so fixated on let's stay here. This seems like a good sort of transition for me that you're like, no, I'm not done yet. Hold on. Stay here. I want to see if I can figure this out. Like it looked like somebody working a position where you don't let the person leave. Like the person's like, all right, you did this. You're like, nah, now we got to work through this buzzer. I want to see what's happening here. So
Yeah.
I laughed pretty hard because all I could think of was I was like, oh, God damn it. That kid made that work. Good for him. So it was another impressive moment. You're about to go into the finals, though. So what does temperature feel like? Like, what does it feel like for you? Do you have your family here? Do you have friends in attendance? Like, what is happening with you as you're about to get into this final round?
No, so my parents had to stay here in TJ. My fiance was she was with her family in Michoacan. So it's like an 8 hour bus from Mexico City to over there. And they weren't able to go because, you know, it's like 5 or 6 people that will have to go, right? So it was kind of hard. And I was like, you know what? I don't mind. I'll go by myself. I had friends that were able to coach me from there that I've had very good communication along the years with them. And I've fought a lot in Mexico City, and especially because I'm a representative from over there, like I think I won the people over for me. Um, so I didn't really have like a lot of close friends per se, but I have a lot of friends that were there and that were present like in the audience now. And of course, like as they were seeing that I progressed through the bracket, I mean, they would start to cheer for me. You know? Um, but no, like my mentality is very funny. Like it was weird because I was very stressed before heading to the tournament because I didn't even know if I was gonna have like a good performance. So I didn't wanna go there and be like a letdown. You know, like oh, like he fought poorly, and then he didn't win, or maybe he won, but he didn't win like super cool. You know, like whatever, no. But that was like my whole stick. Like I was pretty stressed in that regard. Like I just wanted to um, be able to make it to the tournament and at the very least have good fights. You know?
Was this based on the thought of the rib that the rib
Yes.
might be an impairment on the performance? so that you were already kind of thinking like, maybe in your head, maybe your darkest part of your brain, like maybe you're not going to perform as well as you know you can with this impairment. And that's a perfectly logical thing to do. It's just most people don't admit it. You know, like whenever they have the smallest of injuries, they don't want to do this where they go, I don't want to say it was my injury, the reason I didn't win. But you know those posts, when you read it, all you can think of is, this sounds like an excuse. Like, you just don't want to be that tail.
Yeah, no, because to be honest, I've fought, competed, done super fights more so injured or overtrained or sick or whatever than I have when I felt 100%, which in jiu-jitsu you're never really 100%, right? But like as close to like healthy, I felt more like in the other side, no? So for me, it's nothing different, but still like those little dark thoughts in your brain that are saying like, oh, like you're probably gonna suck, dude, you know, or you're probably not gonna perform as you want. Sure, like they weren't whispering, they were kind of like screaming on my head, but it was more so the fact of saying like, let's just go to a tournament and fight, see what happens, right? Mostly because I've grown with my family. We've always enjoyed, you know, like samurai movies, the strong archetype of the lone warrior, right? And I wouldn't say like I like being like that just because it's something cool. I think it's just I've learned to be that way. So usually with something it's not 100%, I still am able to be like a little bit optimistic at the very least. And even if it's not fully optimistic, it's like I'll pull through somehow. And if I don't pull through, maybe I wasn't deserving enough, right? Or maybe that day just wasn't my day, because it happens too, right? But yeah, I mean, it got a little dark, especially because it's like it's rather natural and normal. No, it's human to say like, hey man, like you get your finger injured, it's like okay, maybe you are bitching a little bit, no? But when it's like something major, like a rib, like your ligaments on your knees, your shoulder is not able to go like above your head, stuff like that. Okay, probably you should say, hey, thank you for the invitation. I won't be able to go. I'm not 100%. And sure, like 4 days before the tournament, I was kind of tempted to say that, but I was like, no, just go. Just go. We never know what's going to happen. And man, luckily everything played out as it did, you know?
Yeah. And you're right, because I always equate it to, with my students, if they, and it happens to everybody in jiu-jitsu. I feel like everybody in jiu-jitsu, especially very early on, you always get that student who goes, oh, something with my rib. And I go, well, it finally happened to you. Welcome to jiu-jitsu. And they're trying to explain it as if it's never happened to anybody else. And I'm like, it's literally happened to all of us. Like almost all of us have had some kind of rib injury. And I'm like, I remember when I was a white belt and it happened. And I thought like, how do I train? What do I do? And you think what you would tell them. And you're like, clearly don't train, take some time off. That's the only way that's really going to heal up. But when you come back, no, you're probably going to train a little bit differently. We all tell our students this. But when it comes to a competition in this particular format, they only happen so many times in the weight class, so many seasons. And if you had put in the work, sometimes it's very difficult to say, I have to bow out when everything else seems to be in line to put a performance out that you feel is worthy of you as a grappler, as a competitor, and as that lone wolf. So yeah, it all checks out where you're like, I got to do it. And it is a difference maker. And you were right in this particular instance. So it would be hard to imagine you turning down that opportunity and not getting the result that may or may not have, like, we don't know. We don't know what would have happened with you not doing it, but we do know that with you actually taking that ticket and going to that final, that you were able to make something happen. So having said all that, before we ask about your finish in this final, did your rib feel like it was acting up throughout this tournament? Because you weren't spending a ton of time on the mats, but any time on the mats when your rib hurts can feel expounded by a large margin. So for you, were you feeling the effects of the rib throughout that competition?
Funny enough, no. It was surprising, to be honest. Because I think it was more so that I was concentrating on fighting itself. Like, once I was stepping into the muscle, I was like, okay, no, I gotta go in for the kill. I wasn't thinking of me necessarily. So I think that's why I didn't feel anything. And even after a tournament, it's weird and it's probably gonna sound a little wrong, but I didn't feel like as I fought. I didn't feel like adrenaline whatsoever. Like adrenaline high, like oh, like I feel like amazing and stuff. Like no, I just felt like calm, like normal. Like okay, like we did it. I was a little like emotional, sure, afterwards because of the whole like context, correct? Um, but no, it was weird. Like I would have thought like the way of like how I was fighting, like because it was like more physical, more like okay, like let's get things done. Like probably was gonna like twist myself a little bit and I was gonna wince in pain or whatever. But funny enough, no, like it was tougher to train the days leading up to the tournament than it was fighting the tournament itself.
I do understand that, and I hear you. I do. I'm just looking back at how. Go back to your second match.
Mm-hmm.
That single leg. It looks like you're going to fall on your face. You don't. You fall the right way. You still are moving in ways that I think to myself, well, if I was a person with a rib that was injured, I don't know that even last match transition wouldn't hurt me just a little bit, because even in that, you were able to hold a Kimura trap that requires you to kind of ball up and fall to a certain side. So even when that happens, I'm like, what was happening with your body where you're like, no, I felt fine. Everything there. I'm thinking whatever adrenaline was happening to you was the best drug ever produced, because that natural feeling that you must have been feeling must have been so incredible. But how were you able to finish that match? Because for me, watching you stay so close to it, another flawless finish, another great armbar, and just an epic exclamation mark to what was an incredible performance to begin with. So how were you able to get that finish in the final?
It's funny because, like you said, like for me, like when I was training the last couple of days prior to going to the event, if I would get somebody in the back and they would try to like generate force, so like moving, and I would have to like roll in. But actually, the only moments where it would kind of like mess me up a little bit. But like when I was in that Kimura grip, falling to the side, and like I even felt like more so like on the shoulder, not so much like rolling it in like properly. It was kind of like more like a direct hit, like vertical. Still, like I didn't feel like no issues with the rib or anything. I don't know, like you said, like any natural drug that my body was in, like was kind of like yeah, like it doesn't exist right now. Like you're fighting, just concentrate on the fighting, no. But it was funny. Like I just didn't feel anything, you know. And by the setup, I knew that this is something that I'm kind of known for, like with my friends and stuff. That like my feet are very bendy, even though like it's like this and like oh man, like it is it not hurting anything? I was like no, it hurts. It's just it bends. It's okay, you know. If it doesn't snap, it's fine, you know. But like sometimes like I'll use that on my favorite to be able to like clear the knee line and stuff like that, which I did, so that I will be able to reach at the very least for the C-bill, which was what I was able to do. My idea was to go for the back 100%, but when I saw that his arm was reaching for the ground, I was like, oh, just get the Kimura grip and I'll be able to either go for the arm, go for the triangle from the Kimura trap, or at the very least land on the back, right? So but nice enough, I was able to get it with the first chain of attacks, so that I didn't have to go to like alternate routes and prolong the fight more. But yeah, like when I saw like the arm reaching towards the floor, like a high turtle position, I was like, okay, I'll go for that, you know.
Okay, so now you get the finish, and then what's wild to me is I see you holding that arm bar. They're clearly about to stop it. your opponent's tapping, the referee's coming over, but you just see this emotion already hitting your face because you know that you've won it before they've really called it. Like, you know that you've got this. And then we see you get up and we see you feeling your feels. And this is the only moment where I felt I truly related to you because you got up only to fall back down. Like, that was the moment that I go, you know, honestly, kid, I can't do what you do. But I have done that thing where I've submitted somebody, got up and been like, that was great. And then fallen right back down like, that took everything
Yeah.
out of me. What was going through your head at that point? Because it looked like a true feeling for a guy who likes to call himself a stoic. You allowed yourself to feel what you should have felt, which is just elation from this great moment that you had been building and that had been years in the making. So what was going through your head?
Relief, to be honest. It was just kind of like weight off my shoulders more so. Because at the end of the day, it's like, sure, like the prize money is good, you know? So I was definitely shooting for that, like, hey, have a great performance to where, like, at the very least, you can get some of the prize money of the ABI, you know? And then also the fact that I was coming in very undecisive on how I was going to do. And then I did so well. So for me, it was like, okay, at the very least, I didn't let myself down, you know? So having that as a first thought, you know, like, sure, like I won, that we know, like the moment just happened, no? But for me, it was like, I was able to be proud of myself for the moment. I was like, shit, like you did it, no? So being able to like lay back and be like, okay, like enjoy that moment for like a little second, it was like, yeah, this feels good. You know, I was able to like breathe without having any like concern in, I don't know, the last couple of 6, 7, 8 days, you know? So I think that was mostly what's going through my head. Because to be honest, like afterwards, as they were interviewing me, there was like a click, like, oh shit, like I won, like we're done with the event, you know? So I think that those were the first instincts that kicked in. I feel that's kind of how my brain operated.
Well, I enjoyed that because it really did show your personality. I like watching people when they win. Like, honestly, you almost see a true sense of self. And as a TV guy, a producer, whenever they say like act like you've been there before, sure. But I gotta tell you, those people who do that are super boring TV. So I like when I see some part of a personality. It doesn't have to be giant. Yours was not like a giant thing, but I
Mhm.
saw your personality. I saw the relief, and I didn't know the full backstory. So I couldn't have told you that you had an injury as I was watching you. But
Poker face.
hearing you tell us hearing you tell us this now, obviously in hindsight you kind of see the relief that you must have felt from 8 days of waffling and going back and forth, like, should I do this, should I pull out? You know, you would be mad at yourself if you pulled out. And I think the worst thing that happens to athletes is when they see the guy who did win, if they did pull out, and sometimes they start doing I beat this guy before, I knew I
Mhm.
could beat that guy. So what you did is you saved yourself from that. You just had to get through the journey of, ow, this hurts, up until the
Yeah.
moment when you compete and you go, oh, this doesn't even hurt. This is great. Let's do this again. So in that particular moment, I'm sure it felt good. I did want to ask this. What did
Mhm.
you say to your parents? Because they were the ones who initially responded to putting you on this sort of event many years ago at EBI 3. So, what was their response? Because if you weren't monitoring the social media back then, you would have never known this was a thing. Like, you would have never had this opportunity. But to them, it had to also have some kind of closure that they were right, their instincts were correct to offer it to you and to say like, hey, we think you should do this.
From both sides, he was being proud of they believing in me, and proud of seeing of those old years of hard work. You know, like the many sacrifices that they did for me, and I myself like putting in the work. I think like all of us were very like not just happy but very relieved in the sense of like it paid off. No, it's just that it's like this whole story, you know, like block by block by block, only for the last sentence to say like he made it or it did pay off, right? It's so funny that like a couple of words, or in this sense, like one lasting victory is the one that it kind of like gives purpose to the whole other thing, right? Sure, the whole has purpose in and of itself, but at the end of the day, the victories is what makes it more meaningful. To be honest, meaning will always have meaning, but when you make it more meaningful, like when you start putting more to it, like more seasoning, you would say so. I think, yeah, that was nice. You know, that was the one where I was like a little bit more emotional.
As you should be. So I know that we are going a little bit long, but I just wanted to get to your origin story. If you've got a few more minutes,
Mm-hmm.
just to go through that, but I definitely wanted to encapsulate that whole story that was that EBI because minus you, it still was a crazy event. Like minus your
Mm-hmm.
performance, which was fun and was great and well deserved. Like the whole time I was watching it, I go, "Oh, that person's out now. That person's really good. Oh, that
Mm-hmm.
person's out. Oh, okay." And then when you start seeing who's in, you go, well, that doesn't mean they're bad. It just
Mm-hmm.
means now everything everybody thinks they know about the event is out the window. And
Yeah.
whenever you watch those kind of nights, you think whoever walks out of here is going to have a special moment. And what was so great is Brandon McCatherine, who's a dear friend, and TJ rightfully losing their minds. And BMAC saying, like, this has to be the wildest thing I've ever seen. I can't believe I saw this tonight. Like, he could not stop talking about how it was the greatest EBI night. And this is a man who's been at a number of them behind that mic. So when I hear my friend rightfully propping it up, it was hearing his perspective and saying, like, all things considered, it was crazy, but those are the best kind of moments and memories. So I hope that you catalog that and you in the future can look back at that incredibly fondly for a number of reasons. But let's get to your origin story here. Let's get to the fact that you started so young that you were on EBI 3. So in a way, much like say the Rotolos, you're a youngest vet. Like you've been around
Yeah.
the business for a minute. So let's ask this. When do you remember first getting involved in jiu-jitsu? Were you doing other sports or was this the first one?
No, I did do like they call it lima lama, which is like kind of karate esque, right? More like kata and stuff like that. I didn't like it. I like sparring. I like punching people. So it was weird because like I did that and then I got a foot injury like on my ankle, and I was healing. I said, yeah, I don't want to go back to do that, and I started doing boxing with my grandfather. So that was like the two main sports I was doing when I was like around 8 probably, and then when I was about 10, I for my dad's birthday and mine because we kind of share birthdays like close to date. We went to have dinner and we passed by Entrance, right, which is where I teach and where I initially started training. Um, and he told me like if we weren't so full, I would sign you up. And then me being like sarcastic and like kind of like teasing him, like yeah, like sign me up. Like I'm not full, you know. So we just kind of went there, and it was like okay, like this is an MMA gym. Um, Funny enough, we didn't really used to do a lot of jiu-jitsu. It was more so like wrestling and starting certain positions. I did a lot more kickboxing for sure. So he told me, "Yeah, you won't last here like 1 month," and I told him, "No, I'll do two." And then the years kind of came by. I actually did amateur MMA, like pancrase and stuff like that when I was a kid. Um, and then jiu-jitsu, like no-gi grappling, like as I can now tell that now it was no-gi grappling, like in and of itself. And then jiu-jitsu in the gi as well. I started when I was around either about to turn 13 or I was 13 already. So yeah, it was weird because like most of my jiu-jitsu belts I kind of ran through by them like in a year and a half. And when I was doing EBI, I was kind of like 15. So in reality, like much time training jiu-jitsu per se, I hadn't had much time, to be honest. Like as other people would look at it, no.
Mm.
So it's always funny when people tell me like when you start training jiu-jitsu, like jiu-jitsu in Mexico is kind of weird. Like you sometimes start training and it's more so for like MMA because MMA is bigger here, and some of the times it's kind of just like not. It's just like you kind of do what you see and start with submissions and stuff like that. You know, like it's very weird for here to start with like fundamentals. You know, like we're gonna see guard retention and we're gonna see this setup for leg entanglements, so this setup for leg entanglements. Like to be honest, that has kind of changed. I think more so my generation to where now we do teach that way. Now we do put an emphasis in that. No? I think that's more of a now in the day and age now.
What specifically stuck out to you that you remember about your first class? Because I know it's a little tricky in that it was a little bit more MMA based when you first started, but when you first had your first jiu-jitsu experience, let's call it, like, what do you recall about that first specific set of jiu-jitsu experiences?
What I will say is it was a Thursday. That much I remember, because usually Thursday was jiu-jitsu and it was jiu-jitsu with sparring, right? So out of the get-go, I was like, oh, it's your first day. Cool. Okay, we're going to start. If anything hurts, you do tap. And this is how you kind of submit. So just kind of look out for it, you know? Thankfully, I was kind of watching already like UFC events, DVDs mostly. And I used to have the UFC Undisputed 2009, I think. So I kind of knew like a couple submissions. I didn't know how to get there, but I kind of knew them, no? So I remember kind of just like kind of navigating through my positionings, and I think I kind of submit one guy, if I recall correctly. Got submitted like 20 times, I guess, but I remember like I did submit somebody. Probably not the correct way, but I remember like I liked it, and it was my first day, and I was kind of like, oh, like new fish, go right into the shark tank, go, you know. And the next day was MMA sparring, so it was kind of like test by fire, you know. But I think like even up until now, it's always been like that. So I think I kind of enjoy it, you know, like masochistic probably or something.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far. I don't know you personally, but you know yourself better than I do. I think the one thing we can say is very early on in the interview, you were making mention on how you like to be put into the fire. Now, I think I clearly understand why. And I'll be honest with you. When people come to take my class and they first show up, I always like to tell them like, hey, you're not necessarily going to roll day one. Like, I know it's fun. I know it's a thing we all come here for, but you don't know anything. Like, why am I going to send you out there with no defense to people who can clearly beat you up? But what I do is I do like a series of questions where I'm like, hey, have you trained before? And they'll be like, yes or no. And I go, okay. Have you played other sports before? Yes, no. Sometimes they'll say wrestling, and I'll be like, maybe. Then I just ask these questions where I go like, all right, what is your natural athleticism? What do you do here? And then it just becomes a judgment call. But most of the times I tell them like the first week, you're probably going to sit next to me and ask me any question you have about what they're doing. And what I can do is tell you what their goals are and what our goals are for you. But to have them go in, it usually takes a particular person, usually somebody who's done a little bit of wrestling. I'll be like, knock yourself out, go. If they've taken jiu-jitsu before, it's tricky because sometimes they do this. Sometimes they go, oh, I've taken a jiu-jitsu class. And I'm like, really cool. What'd you learn? Like, sometimes they say that, but they didn't actually ever take a jiu-jitsu class. So half the time it's me literally like asking them questions. It feels like I have a clipboard. I'm like, and who is your instructor? And where did you go? And then at some point, if they know, like, they went with somebody who I know, and I'll be like, hey, Raph, I went to this school. And I'm like, oh, I know them. You're going to be just fine. Yeah, you're probably going to beat up a couple of these guys. Yeah, have fun. But yeah, that's usually the experience I have. The follow-up question I have here, though, is for you, when did jiu-jitsu become more than just a hobby, more than just something that you do? When did it become something that you fell in love with and you wanted to pursue as an actual career?
It was more so when Professor under recruited me, because I used to go there at Atos to do cross training. Um, kind of, but at the same time, I started training jiu-jitsu per se. So, say I was 13, like let's say like by the half of the year, I started to do cross training at the same time, and I was a juvenile. When I started competing as a juvenile in the blue, he told me to come over to San Diego. Start going to a homeschool and stuff like that, and he would help me out to become a world champion. Huh? And so I did. I asked permission from the parents. I was able to do a switch in the school, and yeah, I mean, essentially, there was that was the moment I was like, okay, I am good enough to where they're starting to see that I'm able to do well in the sport. You know? So I was like, okay, I'll probably take this more seriously.
And clearly, it was a good call by both of you to do that. Having said that, you know, all these years later, for you, what has surprised you the most about your journey? Because you were somebody, again, started on like a different area of this. You competed at a young age at EBI. You've had other accomplishments outside of this. You won EBI, but you also still teach at a place that's right near, or essentially the place that you were signed up on that night. So you have a journey that is incredibly vast, but also very centric to a home life that you have been born and raised into. And not many people have that. So what has been the most surprising element of your jiu-jitsu journey that you have encountered thus far in?
I think going from I love fighting, I love competing, I like jiu-jitsu, of course, to I've gained multiple world titles, and many being the first for our country, right? Um, just being able to say that is like that my name is sketched in the history books. So like for me, it's very funny to see that going from hobbyist or not so much hobbyist as I always like competing with my friends in the academy. Now, like at the very least, not like ill intended, just more so like I want to be better. Therefore, if I compete with you, I'll better myself. You know? And then going from that mentality to saying like, no, I strive for greatness now, right? To now being able to say that in the history books of the sport, in like saying that I was the first world champion in the IBDF as an adult, right? Winning the blue belt, now the purple in the nogi, now the brown in the nogi as well, and now in EBI, right? It's like I just keep putting my name more in the history, more in the history, more in the history. So going from like semi hobbyist to now full blown competitor, and now to say like I believe even if I say like today, yeah, like I'm done competing, too many injuries, and like the stress of like having to compete and stuff like that, I could walk out and say like I leave my mark. Maybe not like other people that like have 4 world titles in the black belt and stuff like that, but in my own sense, for my people, I've done that. You know, like differently, but I've done it. So for me, that's very. I wouldn't say surprising. It's just very memorable. Like maybe when I get older and stuff like that, I'll have pride in that. You know? I have pride on it now, but I know then I will so too.
Understood. I'd love to ask this. What does the future look like for you then? Because you mentioned all these things that you have achieved and you tease the idea. You're like, well, I mean, I could quit today, but you're not going to quit today. So like, what do you feel is in the future for you?
Uh, to be honest, I would like one more world title in the IBJJF, the Gi or no Gi. Obviously, the one that has more prestige is in the Gi. I would like to strive for that. Um, Also, it will be, of course, it's very hard. No, IBJJF is always hard. Um, in the no Gi as well, you know, I don't discredit either or. Mostly because I want to be able to accomplish that, to say, hey, my name one more time in the history book. You know? After that, I mean, it kind of depends. You know, I've always liked teaching a lot. You know, like as I love competing, I love teaching because YouTube has given me so much. So I feel like that's the way I can kind of repay for what YouTube has done for me. So, for example, like with my students, the ones that I teach private and the ones that I get from my class in and of itself, um, I always love like helping them in their doubts and how to do things better, stuff like that. If what they're doing is already good enough, if there's something that we can adjust. So I know eventually something that I do want to transition more so, like into just kind of laid back in competition a little bit more so. At the very least for now, no, because I want to be able to um, kind of work my way into that either G or no G world title stage. And then after that, it's just kind of like we'll see, you know, like what comes, what opportunity comes. We'll see, like what's good for me, especially because, like you said, I'm a young veteran as well. So it might seem that I'm healthy and stuff like that, but I have a lot of injuries, not major ones. I mean, thankfully, no. Like um, my back is good enough to where like it just kind of semi hurts, but you know, my knees do have some lingering issues and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm able to walk, and I and I want to be able to walk comfortably by the time I'm 45. You know, so it's also kind of like in between games. You know, so as of right now, like I'm just kind of seeing like how I feel up, what other opportunities come next, and if I feel like uh, healthy enough, yeah, we'll pursue the geek season. If not, I'll just focus more so into the end of the year for the no geek season.
Good for you, sir. And as somebody who's staring very closely at 45, semi hurts is like, might as well be healthy. Like to me, at this point, I'm
Yeah,
like, anytime something's like, oh, that semi hurts, we're in good business. It's when stuff actually goes, no, this doesn't feel great, that you start to always worry. And I told people this multiple times, but I go, I'm at an age now where I get like a small injury and I start thinking like, well, it's been a good run. It's been a good jiu-jitsu career. And people were like, really? And I was like, yeah. And then I'm back on like a day later. But in my head, I'm always thinking like, oh, this always feels like the worst. Like this is always worse than it was the last time or whatever it is. Whatever's ailing you, you just go, yeah, this sucks. And I used to be able to heal much faster. So that's what you have to look forward to. Fortunately, though, it sounds like things are on the up and up and on the mend for you. When we end these interviews, I like to do something. I like to put the camera back on you, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to shout out any of your friends, your family members, your teammates, and basically say thank you to anybody you want to who helped you achieve that. Now, I know they put a microphone in front of you, but adrenaline be a bitch. Sometimes you don't know what you're saying. So hopefully this time, if you missed anything or forgot anything, we can get you to go ahead and give some props or recognition. And feel free to drop any plugs for anything that you're looking to do in the near future or where people can come train with you, sir. Camera's on you.
yeah. I mean, I'm always very grateful to the parents because they're the ones that set me into this path. I mean, not set me because they didn't put me to train, no, um, but they were supportive to the full extent to make me not only be able to train in TJ, but also in San Diego, you know, the many sacrifices that they put out, to my fiance that helps me day in, day out with everything that I venture off to do, you know, like the crazy crossing the border, like every now and then going there and then teaching over here. Um, my students, because they're also a pillar of what I do, you know, like at the end of the day, like I teach them correctly, it's like I'm learning twice, you know. So it's like I'm relearning what I'm teaching, and at the end of the day, it's like I feel like as jiu-jitsu held my life and molded it. Maybe for them, they're not gonna do something like in competition. Maybe that's not gonna be for them. But maybe they'll have healthy lifestyles or have something that where like they can take the stress off and stuff like that. I feel that sense of responsibility. You know, they're like, how did you need to change my life? Probably the way I teach them and what I'm teaching them will change theirs. So I'm grateful that they're always there. They're very supportive. Um, Obviously to my sponsor, you know, like for example, I used to be with other brands, you know, from like the US and stuff like that, and I always wanted to have a brand that will be from Mexico. I was like, Mexican athlete, Mexican brand, right? That was something that I always strive for, and we were able to achieve something on the highest level, and you know, homegrown as well. So that's something that I'm very very appreciative of, you know. So yeah, other than that is like gratefulness for what I achieved and hopefulness for what I will achieve.
Well, congratulations once again to you, young man. It is truly an impressive performance that you had. And if people are smart, they should take you up on those privates, because I was looking at that crab ride and I was just like, no, this is too much. This kid's already, he's achieving too much. Like, even if you didn't win, I was like, you looked like $1 million that night. And obviously things worked out pretty good for you. So congratulations again. And we appreciate you for coming on the show. Obviously, we will look forward to having you back at some point when you win something else. But for right now, big congratulations. A very cool full circle moment for you, sir.
Thank you so much, brother. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I'm going to say bye to you off air. I'm just going to close this up real quick, and then we'll get off with this. But thank you again. Our thanks to your champ, everybody. Demian, appreciate you guys. We appreciate you for watching along. Some reminders. First and foremost, if you like this show, give us a like, a comment, and a subscribe on this channel. If you don't know what you want to comment on right now, tell us an injury that you have gone through to competition that you regretted. Now, obviously, it worked out for some people here, not naming names, just some people, but it doesn't always work out for everybody else. Nonetheless, tell us in the comment section if you've ever competed on an injury that maybe you shouldn't have. And you can find that here on our YouTube page. Like, comment, and subscribe. You can also head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/grappling hour. $5 a month, see these interviews 30 days before anybody else. And for a few extra dollars, see extra bonus content like Roast Raf, like tape studies with the athletes themselves, extra episodes, and the Grappling Hour Challenge, where some of our favorite athletes are coming to beat me up. You can also find more merch at rafasparza.com/merch. Support this show. Every cent goes into this show. And finally, you can find us on Discord to continue the conversations that we have here on the show. Ladies and gents, that's going to do it for us here at the Grappling Hour. Thank you so much for taking time to watch this episode. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time. Until then, it's been a great day for grappling. We'll see you back on the mats.